Contrast is a collaborative work, a podcast fully produced and hosted by the officers and residents of the Idaho Correctional Institution in Orofino.
Welcome to Contrast. Today, our guest is the Idaho Department of Corrections Director, Josh Tewalt. I also have Trima Carlin, our warden, Deputy Warden Amy Anderson. We have resident Dave and myself, Lieutenant Craig, filling in for Kent the Beard Shriver.
Good job. Cheesy beard.
Cheesy beard.
Did you rub Cheez-Its over your beard to bring the true aura of Kent Shriver?
I tried.
Okay.
Welcome, Director.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you.
So first, I just kind of want to do an introduction, Josh. I know that you have several years with our agency. I know you had a break in service. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with our agency so far?
Yeah. First, I'm an Aries, which I think typical Aries, right? No. So my path to the department was a little bit unique in that I started out on the kind of in politics and policy side of things, and worked at the State House for a while, and had worked for Governor Kempthorne, and then worked in the congressional office for then Congressman Butch Otter, and left his employ and went to work for the Idaho Cattle Association and was their executive vice president. And when Butch Otter was elected governor, he reached out to see if I'd like to come back, and I welcomed the opportunity, but I kind of wanted to try something different. And we ended up doing public safety instead of ag and natural resources, which had been it's what I grew up in. It's what I'd done the entirety of my career. So decided to get in the public safety space, and it took almost zero time for me to just gravitate towards corrections. Probably at the expense of everything else I was supposed to be doing, but it was just it was fascinating to me, and I would come to later learn. It wasn't as fascinating for why I initially thought, but it was, I love complex puzzles. The more complex, the more interested I am. And here's something that, what's more complex than human behavior, and trying to find ways to help people turn things around. So I was fascinated by the field of corrections. I worked around it for about 3 years until then. Chief of Operations Kevin Kemp asked me to come to the department as Deputy Chief of Prisons, and that was in 2011. So, came to the department in 2011. Worked in the prisons division. Some wardens were more difficult to manage than others.
Amen.
Yeah, and
I wonder who they were.
Yeah,
I told you guys this was coming.
I know I'm not going to look. This is a worldwide podcast. I'm not going to mention names, but it rhymes with Karima Tarlin. And, just uniquely challenging. Almost drove me out of the field entirely, but somehow I persevered.
They probably giggled when they were like, "So you get to supervise Tarima?"
Yeah, here you go.
And this will tell us how successful you will be.
Let's see how long this lasts. But no, once I understood that I got my marching orders from Tarima and just did what she told, and everything would be good to go. But fast forward, I had some, I worked in the department in the prisons division, and then eventually Kevin Kemp became director of the agency, and he pulled me into a different role. My background in policy and finance as well in the governor's office. He positioned me out of the director's office to work on budget policy a lot of those things for the agency. So did that for a couple years. When he left, he went to be the executive director of what was then known as the Association of State Correctional Administrators, and I left to join him as the director of operations. And that was a really unique experience in that you're working for all the directors of other correctional systems. I had the opportunity to do some consulting projects in other states, visit a lot of different correctional systems, and spend some meaningful time. But I think probably the thing I learned the most is on paper. It was the perfect job. I had complete autonomy over my schedule. I got to go see cool things, meet cool people, do cool things. And about 6 months in, I was just miserable. Like, had a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. And what it helped me appreciate and helped me realize was that it wasn't like this nebulous concept of corrections that I enjoyed. It was the ability to contribute, to kind of get your hands in it, and then feel the results on the back end. And that was something I found completely unsatisfying about doing consulting work. Is you fly in somewhere, you're troubleshooting and doing all this amazing stuff, and you put together this package with a bow on it, and the hard part's getting back on the plane, because you want to stay and help, you want to stay and be a part of that process. So I did that for about 2 years, and then in late November of 2018, the then board chair reached out to see if I'd be interested in coming back as director, and the rest, as they say, is history. So excited to be back. And
Did such a good job managing Warden Carlin. We'd like you to come back.
Yeah, because nobody else could at that point. And
So stepping into the room
Late.
we have Sergeant Jason Lichty
Hello.
joining the podcast
Yes.
on contrast with Director Tewalt.
It was actually kind of a good transition, because I'm just going to attempt to herd these cats back in.
Well,
This is why we're not going worldwide.
Exactly.
It's too much.
So you talked about what led up to you becoming our director. So that was in November of 2018 that they reached out to you for that. So since November of 2018, we have had a lot of things happen.
one or two.
Yeah. And so let's talk. I would like to hear your perspective of what the last couple of years has been like professionally, and maybe even a little personally.
Yeah. Well, I think you have the best plans, and then life gets in the way, right? And so I think I when I came back to the agency, it number one, it felt like it was home for me. It's not like you're trying to relearn or learn a new system. The people are familiar, the system is familiar, and really the trick is to try to take what that perspective, what you've seen and what you've learned in other systems, and this isn't. There aren't a lot of new ideas. Like it's just intentional piracy. Steal the stuff that's working from other places and figure out how you can make it work in these systems. And so, we came back. I think at the time we were coming into late 2018, early 2019. We were starting to come into what appeared to be a recession. The agency, I think, was, as it had been before, under-resourced, especially in community supervision. We were not competitive in the labor market and trying to hire staff. That was continuing to be a challenge, and we were also experiencing record growth in our system. And I had a couple people ask, like, why would you want to come back now? And it's like, well, now's the good time to come back. The worst time to come back is when everything's firing on all cylinders and having somebody say, like, just keep it between the lines. Like that isn't particularly exciting. And so it was a good opportunity to try to see if we could do things a little bit differently and better position everybody to be successful, not just our staff, not just people in prisons, our staff in prisons or our staff in community supervision, but everybody who's under our charge and everybody who's in our custody. Like, let's look at how we can kind of reframe some of these issues that we've been struggling with for a long time. And so we had some early success, and we were able to get some initial pay increases. We were able to get some additional staff, some new resources, things like that. And of course, you have your plans for the next 2 or 3 years, and we're firing on all cylinders and continuing to try to get better. And of course, we have a pandemic. March of 2020 hit, and it really just changed everything from a not just a professional standpoint, but a personal standpoint as well. And I think the one good thing that happened is I think our response to the pandemic just kind of helped solidify who we are. And that was something that was important to us as a leadership team. I was in a training. We saw it coming down the way. I mean, other systems were dealing with it. It had made its way to Washington State and had entered their correctional system, so we knew it was coming. And on I think it was the 12th of March, we had Chad Page stand up ICS, and we kind of lined out 3 phases. One was, planning. The second phase was response, and we made it in phase 1 all of about 24 hours because that next Friday, Idaho had its first confirmed case of COVID, and so we entered that response phase. But one of the things that it gave us an opportunity to do is just kind of lean back on that mantra that times of crisis don't build character, they reveal it. And we knew, I think we had the foresight to understand this wasn't going to be a 2 weeks and then we're out of the deal. I think, we knew on the front end we were going to be looking at this. At the time, we thought about 18 months was going to be the mark for us to figure out a way to get on the backside of it. But at the very beginning, it gave us an opportunity to really, kind of have those hard conversations and just say, look, if it mattered on March 12th, it still matters on March 13th. And that means that we don't just stop doing it. We got to find creative ways to make these things happen. So if we genuinely give a damn about, finding ways to help people in our custody be connected to their families, we got to figure it out. We got to, we can't just hide and wait for this thing to pass. We still have work to do as an agency, and we got to figure out ways to do it. And staff responded in some pretty creative but inspiring and amazing ways. And we also had people in custody that kind of took the mindset that we're all in this thing together, because it wasn't just. We weren't just the ones experiencing it. They were experiencing it. The families were experiencing it. And so, professionally, we went through, I think, some pretty difficult times. But, personally, I think it was equally trying for a lot of people. Like it's just not something that any of us had been through before. And you just add a measure of uncertainty in your life. And, that was the part that I think just for me personally to struggle with. It really helped me appreciate just the fragility of it all. And I found myself on so many occasions just needing people to be patient with me, because of what I was going through, and helped me be more patient with other people, because everybody's got their shit. And it was an unusually trying time, but it also, was I think it was on a couple fronts, it was a unique opportunity for growth, not just for me personally, but for us as an agency. And, we've had, you just get so mired down in everything that's coming your way, you don't really have those opportunities to reflect. And I remember we've been in that damn thing for a while now, and we were getting ready for a board meeting, and Bree Derrick, the deputy director, had put together a presentation on, like our strategic initiatives. And I remember sitting in that board meeting, and we were about a year into the pandemic. I just remember looking at the things that we had somehow found a way to accomplish during times that you could generously call less than ideal. And I remember just sitting there going, like, had you told me before the pandemic that we would cross these things off the list, I would have taken it 10 times out of 10. Mm-hmm. And I never would have expected that we could have, that people would have risen to the occasion at that level to get those kind of things done during a pandemic. But they did. And, so there's also the, just the universal truth that change is hard. It sucks. Nobody's sitting there looking for it. But it gave us a chance to do some things that, because we had to, that would have taken us years trying to convince people it's the right thing to do. So, there were a lot of unintended benefits that came from, an otherwise tragic situation. But, I think, I wish I knew that we were all the way through, that, we've made it to the other side. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. But, I think we're better as a system today. I feel like I'm better as a person today because of, all the stuff that we had to go through. So, yeah, it was a pretty unique time.
How do you think you compare to other departments of corrections around the country as far as the pandemic?
Yeah, I think, I think we fared better than most correctional systems, but we had the benefit of time. I mean, we had the benefit of learning from other systems that experienced it before us.
Yeah.
We went, I want to say, somewhere around 100 days before we actually had a positive case in our system, which gave us time to learn and try to better prepare for it. And candidly, though, I mean, it when it hit, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, we had our first positive at ISCC, and that next day, I'm looking at a heat map that had been generated of where that one person who was positive, everybody they might have come into contact with, and it touched every unit in that facility but one.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, you think you're ready to battle infectious disease because, well, we have flu plans and influenza and all that stuff, and then you see something that spreads in a way that you've never seen before, and it just kind of, we were fortunate that we had time to get ready because there were a lot of systems that didn't, and I think we had tragic loss of life as a result, but our outcomes, especially the severe negative outcomes, were significantly lower than a lot of correctional systems. Early in the pandemic, I was on a call with some of my peers, and I had a director from another state that told me, my staff are coming to work every day to watch people die.
Oh.
And it's not just them. It's not just people in custody. It's other staff members. I mean, so I think those states that got hit early, felt, the more significant, catastrophic outcomes. And we certainly had some. And we certainly made a lot of mistakes. But I think, while we had a high positivity rate, I think the fact that we had such a low incidence of catastrophic outcome is a testament to the time that we had to prepare and the efforts people took to actively try to prevent it.
Well, I'll tell you what I experienced for the first time was getting an email from the director telling me to hang in there, and that you're doing all you can, and giving me an update on what's going on, because that's the scary part about being a resident in a situation like that, is you don't really know what's coming up next. You don't really know what's going on. And you hear rumors about, down south, this is going on and that's going on. And so to get an email from the director to tell us what's going on, how many positive cases, and giving us, basically telling us to keep our heads up. We'll get through this together, I've been incarcerated for 20 years. And I've never had that happen, So.
Was that helpful to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was amazing. I called you Uncle Josh. I'd say, I got an email from Uncle Josh today.
Uncle Cracker, it's Uncle Josh.
Yeah.
It is. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I just, it's, there were a couple things that we did
You would have never thought an email would be so impactful.
Well, no, and like it's hard, it's hard to think that, like, I know me pretty well, and I don't want to break the allure, but I'm not that big of a deal. And so I just naturally assume that when I know how I respond to a lot of emails I get, and I just, like, every time, I write those out, I just assume that people are like rolling their eyes and going,
Right.
next, that sort of deal. And
No.
and so no, I appreciate you saying that. But there were a couple things that, the other thing that I knew, like, I have access to the entirety of the information, right? Like, we're doing incident command every single day. I'm meeting with state epidemiologists. I'm meeting with our command staff. And so I have the benefit of all this information. And I know how I felt. I know how uncertain I felt as somebody who had the entirety of the information, that it wasn't lost on us how, not just how you all might have felt, but your loved ones on the outside, because there's no shortage of rumors that we certainly heard, and I had so many family members reaching out to me personally, and some, because they're hearing from their loved ones, hey, so and so's sick and hasn't been seen by medical or something like that. And so, you take every single one of those seriously. You try to do something about it. But we also made the decision early on, because not just to help communicate with our staff, but also to we didn't have anything to hide, and we wanted everybody to have the benefit of the information we did. So, for a good chunk of, especially the early part of the pandemic, I would do daily updates, and we'd publish them to the website so that everybody could read them. They were public, and selfishly, some of that was to distribute information. There were some days where it was just like therapy, therapy for me. And I think people learned a little more about my family than they probably wanted to. But no, it was, there were, it really allowed us to feel like we were able to make some connections in ways that you just normally aren't. And good lessons though for us, because I do, it's hard to, for me to sit there and think that, somebody appreciates an email from me.
Yeah.
I'll say that when that email came out, that was quite the topic in the building.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion amongst the resident population, talking to staff. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody needed the information. So it was definitely a great thing to spread that information around.
Well, it's easy to get too caught up in the big picture, and something like that is a real indicator of what's going on. We see the big this and the big that, but you see something small like that is what really it's the real indicator of the direction that the department's going, or a look into how you feel about your job and how you feel about us.
Yeah, in those emails, like it was, the one thing I was particularly aware of is that, like, I did not want to give bad information, and I just, my credibility matters to me, and one of the commitments I made was that if we had a catastrophic outcome, if we had a fatality, because there were so many rumors going around that, I distinctly remember putting in an email, like, if that happens, you're going to hear it from me first.
Yeah.
You're not going to read about it on the news. You're not going to hear
Right.
it from somebody else. Like, I'm going to be the one to communicate that to you. And then we had our first fatality, and and it was something that we were struggling internally. Like, how do we treat this? Like, do we put out do we do a press release? Do we do that? But I told everybody, like, hey, we're going to announce it to our staff, and we're going to announce it to our residents first. Like, we got to get that information out there, because I promised them that they'd hear it from me first. And I put that email together, and the JPay system went down.
Oh no.
And I just remember sitting there going, like, I don't care what you have to do. Get the damn email out. Mm-hmm. Like, I do not want, because I knew it was going to be public before long, but, it was one of those moments where it's like, I promised them that they were going to hear it from me first. And if they don't, like that's a measure of credibility I'll never get back. So.
For me, as a facility head, that type of an attitude helped me go through the pandemic on a more local level, obviously. And I didn't feel like I needed to not be transparent. I felt like I could share whatever I needed to share. I also really felt like we went through it together. I mean, at least at this facility, the staff and the resident population really did it together. There wasn't a lot of us versus them. And, when it started to get, a little bit into it, you saw a little bit of resistance as far as masks and stuff. I was a firm believer that I was not going to impact people's parole eligibility over a mask, but I was going to get their buy-in. And I think that was a lot of the same direction that everybody else went, both staff and the residents. And so for being one of the most introverted people that I know, I discovered personally through this that I really do need people. It's hard for me to not be able to talk to somebody and see their face.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was, I always try to take these types of circumstances and learn from them later and somehow, reflect personally, professionally, how can we improve from these things? And I was just really shocked at how socially we were impacted by COVID and how it had so impacted us socially within a facility as well.
Yeah.
Now, all seriousness aside, sometimes we wish people would wear a mask still because they've got some really bad breath,
When you
right?
walk in the store and you're like, oh, I didn't want to see that person.
Right, exactly.
I hope they don't recognize me.
Right. But for the most part, we really lost a lot of communication through that process. But we also learned a lot through that process about each other and what other people need and what we need. And so I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And we just need to learn from that.
A common thing in prisons in the past, cleanliness has always been kind of a veteran incarcerated move, right? The young kids never clean up after themselves, and that's always been. But I'll tell you, when this hit, the cleanliness of the facilities, this facility went up tremendously. Everybody was cleaning.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can no longer be the kid. You had to clean. No. Everybody's jumping in. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. But I'm with Trima. I think the facility as a whole, both staff and residents alike, we were in it together. There's no stepping out of it. We have to come to work. We're going to come to work. That's what we do. And people are going to get sick. And we're going to do the best we can to manage it. And overall, I thought we did pretty. I mean, it was stressful.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I had, when we, I went out to, I was out at ISCI on a Sunday afternoon, and they had announced that while I was there, the CUNA School District, where I live and where those, kind of near those facilities, they had announced that they were closing down school. They were going virtual, and I was sitting there talking to the shift commander at the time, and we were just going like, oh man, it's going to be like, how are we going to staff this facility? Mm-hmm. And we went 60 days where we had the fewest call outs we'd had in years, just the way staff responded. Now, in fairness, like I had to help my kids on the virtual learning platform, so I understand why people were going to work.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate it at the time,
Yeah.
but then I'm like, no, I get
So
it.
glad my kids graduated before all this happened.
No,
'cause
I'll
there was
go.
no way.
I'll go pull a 16 out south of town. No questions asked.
There's a reason that we are not in the education field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just the way people responded to it, I think was everybody was just so impressive and inspiring, and the other aspect that I think was uniquely frustrating was just, Tarima's heard me say it a million times, like our job isn't to be right, it's to get it right. And that means wearing it when we're wrong, and, just having a badge or because policy says so doesn't mean it's right. And that was just the way that information changed through the pandemic. Like there were so many times where I know people were frustrated with the change in direction and all that stuff. And it's like, well, the alternative is we just hang on to what we thought was right 2 weeks ago, even though now we know it's wrong, or we just wear it and say, hey, it's changed. We're going to do something different, that sort of a deal. And I know how frustrating that was for people to, get start and stop and start and stop, or now you're going this way. But it, I think it also conditioned people a little bit to be a little more forthcoming that, hey, if we got it wrong, we're going to say we got it wrong.
Right.
And now what we're going to focus on is getting it right, not trying to hang on to something just because we said it a couple weeks ago. So a lot of lessons that came out of this.
It was huge for us in that we were kind of the last facility to really get hit. And luckily it was all at once, and then it, was better. But we had a lot of time to plan and learn from other facilities. And I remember putting together this command book for medical and everyone, right? Everyone got one. And it was plans we all put together. When it hits, this is what we're going to do, right? And I don't think we cracked it once.
Never opened it.
Because as soon as we tried to put the plan in place, someone would come to us and say, nope, you can't do that. Nope, you can't do that. And so...
Or what about this? Did you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, we put a lot of time into that book.
I still have it on my desk.
And medical would call us and say, what happened to you using this book? I'm like, that went out the window the minute this hit. And I don't... just throw it away. At this point,
We spent hours on that.
Yeah, and we thought it was a great plan. And then I remember one morning we sat and we planned, and Trima was off actually at home, but we were on Zoom with her, and we're like, okay, we have this, one of our medical units. This is what we're thinking we're going to do. We mapped the plan out. Staff were, I don't know how they put up with all this, but we had this great plan, and then someone came in, I think medical or someone said, no, you can't do that. And this is after hours of planning. When the numbers come back, this is what we'll do. And we ended up having to completely adjust after we already had staff prepared for this direction.
Right.
And I'm sure behind the scenes they complained, but I was so impressed at how they just kept adapting. Yeah. And I'm sure they were like, why can't you guys plan better? When we were planning and planning and planning and nothing worked. And so we got to a point where we got a good rhythm. We quit. We tried to do the best not to disrupt our residents, which I appreciated. And it went through quickly. I remember going up to Gibbons with you because the entire unit.
We had to put the entire unit on quarantine.
Like 98 out of 140. And so one tier, they just didn't care. They were like, okay. Thank you for coming up and talking to us. And I had just gotten back from having it. And so she's like, Miss Anderson had it. You're not going to die. You're okay. And then we go to the next tier, completely different political and beliefs. And we got hammered. And we were like, oh my gosh, everybody thought that they were panicking. We're going to die. And I was like, how is this one housing unit, but such a different demographic? It was so different.
Right.
But we got through it. I think they appreciated that we walked out there and said, okay, this is the plan. When everyone gets it, then you're off quarantine. And it was interesting to see how that all worked out and trying to get in front of them.
Yeah. At no point did I envy central office because I was having enough trouble managing 580 guys and staff, not even encompassing community corrections and a central office type of system and any of that. So while there were things that we may not have agreed with, I don't think that as a general rule there was really any major complaining. It just was like, oh, this is the third change today. Okay, let's move forward.
Yeah, I think that the staff I think we understand our role. We don't always agree.
Just tell me
we don't always like it. But
Right.
what direction are we going? And we're going to execute.
Right.
And we did.
Right. So I'm going to move to this question, kind of get us off the topic of COVID so we
Thank
can
you.
get moving. We could be stuck on that topic
No.
all day, and I hate it. I'm definitely ready to move on. So one of the questions that they have down is ICIO. How do you see this prison? Is it different? And do you have a theory as to why?
I think Orofino is representative of something that I've certainly noticed about just Idaho's correctional system in general, but it's heightened here. there's just a culture here that I think, makes people want to stay, makes people not want to do something that's going to get them moved south of town or move to another facility. And I think part of it's geography. Like, there are a hell of a lot of worse places in the state to wake up every morning than what you have here. But I think, part of there's just like I say this in the most endearing way, there's a weirdness to this facility that just works.
We do embrace that.
I think everybody in this room will own that.
We embrace it.
And I say this with all sincerity. Like when I love going to facilities. Like, it's my favorite thing to do is to go walk and talk. And that's been one of the curses of the pandemic, was that I had to kind of steer clear, because I didn't want to be that guy that ended up being like Typhoid Josh or something like that. And that was hard. But this is my favorite place to come, and this is my favorite place to come walk graves. And there's just a vibe here that you don't get in all of our other facilities. So it is unique. It is special, and I think it's something I wish we could bottle it and sell it.
I tell new staff all the time that the residents here, I know a lot of them from Max and the yard, but I don't know if it's in the air or the water or both or the food. Mm-hmm. The way they behave down there is inherently different than how they behave up here. And I liken it to a staff relationship, building that rapport. And just, I think our program staff are just fantastic. So it's a collective, but it's definitely unique. Some guys that I've had a lot of history with.
Yeah.
But they act a lot different up here.
We have some success stories, and we've highlighted those and put them out on EDOC. When you have visiting wardens and deputy wardens, and they walk through the facility and see certain people out in our general population, and they're actually wary or scared because of the history they had with them, and they're like, how's that guy just walking around? And then that's the guy that, when we used to do the Christmas wreaths and cookies for all those guys that were approved to go do crafts, was like, all I want to do, Miss Anderson, is hand out cookies. And I'm like, okay, that's your job for today. And who would have thought that was something we would have? So
8 years ago.
No, and he recognizes it. And so then we have those conversations with newer staff and say, why don't you tell them about your history? And he's open about that. He's like, look, this is how I started my career. I was supposed to get out, and I'm still here. So I think that's a success.
Yeah, you bet.
Definitely.
I agree.
Well, you've been here for how long? And you and I started when I was a sergeant.
Yeah.
They asked me to consider letting you come here, GP.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, but we're not going to have any problems, right?
Right.
And then it's been how many years now? 15, 20? I don't even know.
No, I've been up here for close to 10, maybe 10 now.
Well, you were here, and then I think you left for a short minute.
Yeah, I came up in, I think it was 2006 or 7, into the closed custody unit.
I was his case manager.
We were not good.
No, you were not nice.
Unit. No, that was yeah. They just I was in Max, and they just came and rolled a bunch of us up in the middle of the night. Said, "You're moving to Orfino." We're like, "What?"
We went down there and screened files.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
we did all that.
Yeah,
I was a sergeant then.
And we got up here, and we were not good up here.
No, and when we rolled you guys up to leave, that was whoa.
Yeah, that was our whole thing, was to make you guys kick us out of here, and we tried everything we could to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not. I was a different person, you know.
Yeah.
But then when I came back, I was ready, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was grateful to have that opportunity, because no other facility wanted me because of my gang history and my history in general. And you guys gave me an opportunity, and I felt like I wasn't going to let you down. I wasn't going to just, be ungrateful for that opportunity. And I think a lot of people feel that way. They feel like once they got here, they finally made it, like they can just relax, There's some people that get in here and, they're not ready, but
Or they fake it.
Yeah.
And it becomes transparent that behind the scenes they're creating more
Right.
drama.
But they were outnumbered for sure.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
I agree.
So a couple of the guys wanted me to ask, you're aware that the price of commissary has gone up.
Yeah.
And so they're wondering if inmate wages maybe should reflect the cost of living basically for us. If you're making 40 cents an hour, you could have been making that for the last 10 years, you know?
Yeah. No comment. Next question. No.
Just kidding.
No, I
That's great.
yeah. So if you look over the last couple of years and what you're going to see from this agency, and you'll see a concerted effort over this next year, is we're going to put a pretty big premium on pay. And it's not, cost of living's going up, inflation, energy, all that stuff. Don't care. That has nothing to do with it. The reason we're going to focus on wages is that, I think we have, it's not lost on us that when folks are walking out our door, we want them to have resources at their disposal to help provide for their own reentry. And we put about $1 million a year into transitional housing and other things like that, and I think it's money well spent. But one of the things we're trying to change is moving away from relying on fees or dedicated funding, things like that, and really focusing more on making sure that we have, number one, more employment opportunities for people in our custody, but that we're able to compensate them in a way that isn't to pick up another pack of ramen this week, but is more geared towards being able to put some money away, those types of things. So I don't have an answer for you yet. I know it's something that we've talked about, but we're talking about it in the bigger picture of looking at the wages, because you've been around a while, and we've had that conversation. Like, seems like we try to change it about every 2 years, where we'll go from an hourly wage to a salary thing, that sort of thing. And the conversation we're having now, and we'll continue to have, is how do we get candidly, I don't care about the how. I care about the what. Like, what are we paying people, and how do we find ways to increase that so it's meaningful and can allow them to do more with it upon their release. So you're going to see some really cool opportunities coming from correctional industries that I know they've kind of been start and stop up here in Orofino, but we got some this legislative session. We got an authorization to move into the call center space, which I think is really, really cool. Where we have the opportunity to affect, employment are like high turnover industries. So like call centers, they're hiring people, and then those folks are leaving. They're constantly hiring, and so cool opportunity to get people training, meaningful employment that pays real money while they're in custody, and then have jobs that are waiting for them, upon release. So there's that, but there's a whole bunch more coming on the ICI front that's going to look like more opportunities, and those opportunities are going to create competition, which means now we're going to have to, we want somebody to stick around and be a janitor and not go after something. That means we're going to have to pay. We're going to have to reflect the change in the labor market with what we're willing to pay. So those are the kind of conversations we're coming down. Don't have anything like a quick answer to deal with like the immediate inflation, but stay tuned.
Okay. The second one's kind of long, so I'll read it here. It's okay. As far as parole goes, it says the general resident's impression of parole board is that it is incredibly arbitrary. Being DOR free and productive is no guarantee of a date, while a flop is while regularly getting in trouble. I don't have my glasses on.
Is no guarantee of a flop. What does guarantee a flop? Having an outsider, like a victim, speaking against you, is avoiding public controversy really more important than encouraging good behavior? So I think what it was asking is, do you have an idea of how the parole board makes their decisions?
Yeah.
Because we don't have a control over that.
No, we don't. But yeah, I mean, I have such a luxury of being in my position because I'll tell you, when I was in the prisons division, I mean, I've seen names of people who were getting parole, and I'm going like, why in the hell are they letting that dude out? Like, who in their right mind thinks that's a good decision? And now that I'm director, I'm seeing, names of people they aren't letting out, and I'm like, get that fool out the door. Like, let's go, So, yeah, like it's easy for me to sit back and criticize. Here's what I'll tell you. In all sincerity, I know a number of the people on the parole board, and I know that they take their job seriously. I know a couple of them used to work for us, and I know they approach the work the right way, and I know they genuinely care about people being successful. And, I'll go back to what I said before about, us not necessarily being decision makers, but I think us, through the work that we do, affecting the confidence level of the parole board. And, that's where us having routine and regular conversation with them, helping them understand what our programming's like, what the opportunities are. We've had those discussions again because we're looking to take a more holistic approach where we want to be more considerate and intentional about what we consider a program. I mean, we know that, putting somebody in, who's generally low risk through one of our core programs isn't necessarily a good investment. But can we consider educational opportunities a program? Can we consider vocational training and work and those sorts of things? So we're taking a broader picture of how we define the term program, and then trying to help the Parole Commission understand how that actually equates to risk reduction, how that actually equates to better outcomes in the community, while we're also highlighting the new resources that we've made available in probation and parole to help ensure that we don't just have the pieces in place to supervise, we have the pieces in place to provide support services to help people be successful. So I get the situation, I get the perception because I've heard it before. But I also, I think, we may not be the ones making the decision, but I think we have a role in affecting the decisions that they make, and also helping you all understand what's the best path forward for you to get in front of the parole board and ultimately get a date.
Jason, what do you think?
Boom.
Really? Boom.
For Jason.
You have been really quiet. Do you have a question?
I told him he was eye candy.
What?
Only.
Who said you were eye candy?
Yeah, nobody.
They lied to you.
Yeah.
Come on, Jason.
I know. That's what my wife says too.
Yeah.
I'm not eye candy.
Oh.
I really don't have anything.
Lay it on me. Come on.
I really don't have anything, to be honest with you.
You could thank him for the raises.
How about?
Oh yeah, thank you very much for the raises.
Here, you're welcome. Here's a topic.
I do appreciate that.
Or greatest director in the last 3 years? Like, if you guys are looking for something to talk about.
3 years?
Yeah,
3
the last
years?
3
You'll
years.
not lose.
Yeah, a greatest.
Or at least I'm
by
a
far.
semi-finalist.
By
I
far.
got to be somewhere in
Yes.
the conversation. But
No, I know staff
best
definitely
in history.
have shown a lot of appreciation for what you've been doing, especially when it comes to raises, because I know that's huge for staff right now. And I don't think they realize. I've been talking a little bit about the recruitment that the committee that's being brought forward. So, we don't even really understand what it's about yet. So that's going to be great once it hits and they see that it's going to affect us up here, because most everybody thinks that it's all based out of Boise. So to see it up here will be great for our staff anyways.
It's not unusual to have, when Jason's out recruiting, which he's pretty passionate about, when he's talking to people about, look, this is what we're getting paid now, but we have a director that's going to get us more down the road, and we're going to keep seeing this, and it comes true, because then the people hire on and they're like, oh wow.
when does this thing come out?
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we will have raised starting pay again by the time this comes out. And then that's, there are a couple things that we're...
That's what you were wondering.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was wondering.
Yeah.
There are a couple things that we're trying to do, and like when it's all said and done, when we're able to, we're still waiting on the official blessing from the powers that be about our CEC plan. Like we just did the 3%. Remind me, I got to put an email out because everybody got to, they're going to see it on their paycheck.
They're going to get paid before you put an email out.
But I've talked about it a million times.
Right.
It's the pay scale increase. It's the 3%. We're implementing that early, and so everybody got a 3% raise effective the previous pay period. So
You're famous for saying, by the end of business, I'll get that to you.
well,
Business never stops.
no, we never sleep in corrections. Yeah, it works better with people that don't know the business, but no. So that part's coming out, but we've got a merit component that's going to be coming out as well, and once that does, we're gonna we'll raise starting pay again another $1.25, and when that gets implemented in the last 3 years, we will have raised starting pay for our uniformed security staff 35%.
Our veteran staff recognize that.
Absolutely.
I mean, and they've had since day one with you joining us in, was it 2011?
And we just got done with furloughs.
Yeah.
And here comes Josh in
Yeah.
with his white
Everybody
horse.
sees that from a veteran standpoint. It's a big deal. 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was a thing.
And we spend the time telling them when they complain about what they were getting paid in the moment. Look, we started at $9, and then you had furloughs, and some of us more than others, and then you came in, and we've seen a steady increase. And you have to see
we'll be
how beneficial that is.
Yeah, starting pay will be $42,100 a year to get in the door, but I see how beneficial it is, but it's not not satisfied. I mean, I think we can do more, and that's part of the issue I have. I'm somebody who welcomes change. I embrace it, but I don't do it for change's sake. I'm not just looking for something to do. So let's create drama for people. But part of my insistence as to why we have to get better at what we do is not that I'm not incredibly proud of who we are. I would not trade what we have in Idaho for any other correctional system I've been in,
Absolutely.
including foreign systems that I've been in. I wouldn't trade it for a second. But because I know what we're capable of, it means we got to keep pushing. And
Right.
part of my issue with compensation has just been, there are two questions that we have to ask. The first is, are we compensating people based on what our expectations are of them? And in this case, no, I don't think we are, and because I expect more. I expect, because of the unique position we have in the criminal justice system, and there's nobody positioned like we are to affect people in a positive way. I don't know how you put a price on that, but we're not there. And then the second piece is, are we compensating staff in a measure that's commensurate with their role in the correctional system? And the answer to that is clearly no. And so what I'm excited about with these raises, and it's not just in prisons, it's going to be in probation and parole as well, is we're not, we're passing that point where we're the default occupation. That's why I tried getting on at the county, but I'll go to corrections instead. We have leapfrogged county jails. They're going to be chasing us from a compensation standpoint. It's not a question. It's not a question of, am I going to go apply for patrol, or do I have to start in probation and parole until I can get that? No, we're in the hunt. We're competitive, and in a lot of cases, we're going to pay more for probation and parole officers than what you're going to get starting in patrol. And I think that's an overarching theme of, it's not just recognition, it's the respect that our staff and our agency deserves because of the outsized influence and role that we have in changing people's lives.
Yeah. Nice.
When you're recruiting for corrections, it's a lifestyle that people don't understand. I mean, it's not easy work. we're fortunate up here at this facility, but you're asking people to come into an environment that it's just got so many challenges, like you talked about earlier. Some of the things that come out with correctional staff being traumatized. So you're giving them this money, but we have to do the work in our facilities to make it a better environment for them, because we're asking them to come in here and work graveyards and be around 16s and not be around some of the nicest people, staff and residents. I mean, so you're constantly, having that challenge. And so for us, we're recruiting, we're saying, yes, now we have money for you to come in and pay, but now you're going to come into this environment. And so there's going to be you're going to change because of it. And so,
but
hopefully for the better.
But let's go back. Who controls that environment?
That's right.
Like,
Yep,
isn't that
absolutely.
the other piece of this?
Yes,
Isn't that like
and
what we're
that's-
talking about earlier? Is like, who in the hell are we if we're going to say like, hey, you're important, we value you, but we're going to try to counteract the work environment we're going to create for you.
And
Like, that's on us. And that's what that's like. These things aren't separate. They're not. These aren't separate issues. And in the same way that the things we do for our resident population to try to improve that environment, to try to improve the culture, to try to improve the overall experience, that's not just for them. That's for our staff. That's for their work environment. And like, I don't think, like, I don't know how to, I just don't know how to communicate it appropriately, except like we have to make that decision. We have to decide, does what we do matter or not? Because if it does, then we don't get to take tomorrow off. We don't get to wait till next week to try to get better at it. Like, the truth is, it matters so much to so many people, including the people we pay, that we have an obligation to do things the right way. We have an obligation to get better at this work every single day. And if we're not willing to do that, like, we don't deserve to be in these jobs.
It matters to me. It matters to me every day. It really does.
It does. And I have the most amazing leadership team, because they took this vision that I kind of just randomly shared a few years back, and Amy ran with it. And what we've discovered at this facility is that, and this sounds so cliche, happy staff, happy residents, happy staff. Because if you can come in here and have an open and honest conversation with people at this facility, no matter what side of the fence you're from, it makes your job that much easier. You're not fighting against each other. You don't come in and spend 12 hours, arguing with somebody, whether that be your fellow staff member or somebody that you're supervising or you're the guardian over. Pay is a big deal, but so is the culture of the facility that you work in. And you mentioned something about, I don't remember how you worded it, Josh, but basically it was setting expectations. And I think that our staff have this desire to meet every expectation that we put in front of them. If we rise to if we allow them to rise to the level that they're capable of, they are going to jump even further than our expectations. And so if we continue to give them the ability to be somewhat independent, somewhat imaginative, we used our lieutenant team kind of as an experiment, I guess you could say. We brought them to a level and they rose to that level. There were one or two that ended up leaving because they weren't ready for change, but there's not one of those lieutenants that I currently have that I wouldn't put in a deputy warden position or even in a warden position at this point. There's some that have more experience and more wisdom and probably would fit that role better, but I think we've allowed every single one of them an opportunity to show us what they're capable of.
And what do you think happens if we extended that same philosophy to our residents? I mean, that's the irony in criminal justice, is that we tell somebody, because you made a bad decision, we're going to put you in an environment where you only get to make one, and that's whether or not you comply. We're going to tell you when to get up. We're going to tell you when to go to chow. We're going to chart your course for you, and the decision you get to make is whether or not you comply. And based on your ability to make that decision and that decision alone, we're going to go ahead and put you back out and tell you, all right, now make some good decisions. And it's like, that's where, everybody immediately freaks out, and you go like, well, policy says this and policy says that, and it's like, no, like if we can infuse decision making into everyday life, like let's make this a choose your own adventure. And you know what? We're gonna have folks that are gonna need to live in places that look a lot like A Block here, that need to look a lot like our units at Max or our close custody at ISCC, where people are going to make those decisions that are going to wind them into those facilities. But what about the ones who don't? And those are things we control. Those are permissions we're allowing people to have. Those are privileges that we extend. And what if we did that based on the decisions that we allow them to make versus their ability to get older and closer to release?
Yeah. We preached a lot on Charlie 2 and the honors unit when it first came about, that improvement, not perfection. That's a big thing. We expect them to make mistakes. They need to be honest with them. Own your mistakes. Don't create work out of it, And so we've got, some really good units here that have really adopted that philosophy. And I think it's spreading. We have a section of A Block for that inmate, for that guy, because he wants to beat that person. But we've also been able to take that person and get him over here. It takes time, but we're in it to win it. We're not afraid of the challenge. I mean, Dave's here.
Yeah, sometimes all we're looking for really is an off-ramp.
Absolutely.
We're just looking for a way out. I know where I'm going is the wrong way, but, we're just looking for an off-ramp, for a way to get off that path.
We have a significant amount of talent and leadership that are sentenced to our custody. And I certainly Dave's a great example. The residents in your honor units, the peer mentor group that we had at ISCC that's now spread to other institutions in the South Boise complex. There are so many things that where we have to be critical and look at how we can get better. And I think part of that was just that notion that our response to crime was going to be to build these facilities, make them as secure as possible, and then try to figure out what comes next for us, it's like, now, all right, how about we try to figure out what we're trying to achieve with this population, which is helping them make better decisions, helping them navigate this world differently than they did before. How do we facilitate that and then put security around that instead of the other way around? And the result are things that look like the honors unit, but it's, if somebody's going to make a bad decision, I want that to be inside this double perimeter fence at Orofino. I don't want it to be in my neighborhood, in my community. This is a place for people to try and fail and to learn, and hopefully not make those mistakes when they're out in our community.
All right. Thank you, Director Tewalt. We definitely could have gone a lot longer. I just want to thank everybody on the panel for being present, some of them quieter than others. Dave, thank you, as always, for the amazing questions that you bring up.
And the crew.
And the crew.
And the crew.
And thanks for letting me invite myself on here.
Well, I sent you an email, but you never responded.
Anyway.
Close the business.
Close the business.
Yeah, it was close of business.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
She's controlling the podcast again.